I want to talk about a rather abstract subject, but it has mass application, um, and that is disassociation. I want to talk about demoralization and disassociation. When you are demoralized, um, you become more and more inclined to disassociate. Just it's sort of like any quote unquote trauma. I know that word is overused these days. Um, Everybody's calling everything trauma. Anything that's mildly unpleasant is called traumatic. But but nevertheless, I think it's been exhaustively shown that um, people who are in legit trauma uh, tend to disassociate, and that's hence we have so-called dissociative identity disorder, and supposedly the means by which uh, alters, alters, not altars, are created uh, through uh, traumatic, through the inducement of trauma. Um, that's a subject that's been talked about, and I don't want to really, I don't really have anything to add concerning it. But I think, I mean, I don't have, I'm not, I don't doubt that, uh, that it's real. Um, I don't, I don't doubt it at all. I mean, it just makes sense. The disassociating part makes absolute sense. Um, and I think there's also that you would disassociate when under a great deal of pain or torment. That just makes sense. That's going to happen. Now, I think mostly most of the pain or trauma that we face is not, uh, being intentionally crafted by someone who wants to split us into alters, but rather is just part of what we go through in life. The thousand uh, uh, the thousand frets and shocks that flesh is heir to. I think I got that line slightly wrong. It's been a little while since I've gone over my Hamlet, but you know what I'm referring to if you know your Hamlet. Uh, that's mostly where the crap we have to deal with. That's mostly where it comes from. It comes from just what life throws our way, um, and it's unpredictable. Of course, we don't know. I'm sitting in this parking garage right now. Uh, the if the if the ceiling just suddenly collapsed and fell uh, on me and I survived somehow, I would no doubt be traumatized by that event. Um, and it would no doubt cause me to disassociate. But demoralization is a little different because when you're demoralized, it's usually more of a low grade um, state of torment. It's usually a functional state of being. They talk about being a functional alcoholic. I think I could almost call myself, for most of my adult life, a functional depressive. Not in the sense that I'm always gloomy and dark, but what I do think is that, and I don't want to talk a bunch about myself here. That's not the point, to be self-indulgent, but I'm just saying that I remember when I was younger just having a much more vibrant um, uh, sense of things, and just being in general more um, happier, more upbeat, whatever the case may be. Like, I would walk around when I was a child, an adolescent, even, um, and even in my young adult years, when I was starting to things were starting to get a little more heavy, and I was carrying more weight. It does. You find that it just doesn't compare to now. It's you know, I would say when I was, say, 9 or 10, I would be in the state of, like, my state of, if between 1 and 10, 10 being the happiest, one being the most miserable. I would generally be a 7 or an 8 every day. That would just be my norm. It's not like I would go around being, weirdly happy. It's just, you know, that was just my state. Um, when I got to be adolescent, it was more like a 6 or a 7, or I'll say a five through 7, and for most of my adult life, it's like uh, somewhere between 3 and 5. I seldom go lower than 3. And I'm not really at 3 very often. I think I'm more like a 4. 4 out of 10. Now, 4 out of 10 ain't bad, but it's not good either. Um, and that's why I wonder about things, like, I'm not going to get specific about anything, but I wonder about certain ways of treating oneself, uh, whereby one's just general demeanor or general state of things could be boosted, not to some ridiculous level, but I don't see why I shouldn't be living at, at least a 6, like, it, like, I'm living at a 4, but why not just shoot for a 6? But how do you become happier? That's a question. And I'm not someone who says, like, chasing happiness is the thing. I'm not a hedonist at all. But I do think someone who lives my life, who's in my situation, who has the kinds of blessings that I have, even though I've had my share of trials as well. I don't think there's a particular reason why I should be a 4 most of the time. Again, 4 and even 3 is still functioning. It's a functional depressive. I don't think I've ever been in the state where I'm just so miserable that I can't leave my room. I can't. I have to just stay in bed, and I just don't want to move. I'm not motivated to do a thing because I'm so miserable. This is how I hear some people describe their depressive states. That seems like more like a 2 or a 1, or or a 0, or maybe even a negative number. I don't know, but we said that it was 1 to 10, so it would be a 2 or a 1. Um, and that's a state I've rarely ever. I don't know if I've ever felt that bad. I don't know if I've ever felt that low. Um, but I think that, the things that life throws your way, the things that you have to deal with, that aren't pleasant and that are painful and that do kick you around, um, either physically or otherwise, or psychically. They have their effect and they leave their wounds, and that's part of what, you know, that's part of life. That's just what it's all about. But you know, so let me bring it back to disassociation. Okay. I think a part of happiness is escapism. Not escapism in a negative way, not escapism in an irresponsible way. But I had somebody contact me once. I don't remember this person's name, and if you're still listening out there, sorry I've forgotten your name. You can just pipe in and remind me that it's you. But I had somebody tell me once, you should look into, you're a writer, you should look into trying to write something epic, set in some totally imaginative realm. And he cited Dune as the example. Now, I've talked humorously about Dune and not exactly getting it. I don't think, I find it fascinating in a lot of ways, but I don't quite get it, you know. I'm not all the way there. I'm part of the way there, but it still leaves me a little cold. But I understand the idea that he was expressing when he said this, of trying to write, something that's, and it's what I remembered George Lucas saying. Speaking of Dune, of course, people say that George Lucas's Star Wars is just like a poor man's Dune. I don't know whether that's fair or not, but I mean there are obvious influences there, for sure. But that Lucas, I remember saying, I remember reading this. It's in and I remember specifically where I read this. It's in the original novelization of Star Wars, which of course later became known as Episode 4: A New Hope. But I had the book Star Wars, and I reread it many times as a youth because you couldn't just watch the movie, because this was in the days before video, my friends. So sometimes it would come on cable, you could watch it there, but when it's gone from the movie theaters, it's gone, and they might bring it back, or it might come on TV, or it might be on cable. But generally speaking, this was before this was the very beginning of the cable age, right before the video age. And so the only thing I had to remind me of the wonderful feeling I got from watching Star Wars, which I'm just calling Star Wars here, not Episode 4, A New Hope. But the only thing that brought back that wonderful feeling, or some semblance of it, was reading the novel. So I read the novel several times, and the novel is attributed to George Lucas, but George Lucas didn't write the novel. Alan Dean Foster ghost wrote the novel. And I read other books by Alan Dean Foster, of course, at that same time. I was into science fiction as a kid. And anyway, so in the book Star Wars, written by Alan Dean Foster, there's a part in the middle where you see photographs from the movie, and there's also a little write-up, and George Lucas has written like a little like a page-long meditation on why he decided to write and create Star Wars. And what he said was, I had been I had been making these Isn't It Terrible? What's Happened to Society movies, um, which I don't know. Like, was American Graffiti really that? But maybe he was thinking of THX 1138. I don't know what else he'd done at that time, but he was anyway. He was more steeped in social realism, and he decided that no, it's time to make a movie that will make people forget uh, the problems of the world. For 2 hours, they'll forget. They'll be so immersed in this world, this imaginative world of adventure uh, and imagination. I guess I've already said I don't mean to be redundant, but that they'll be so immersed for 2 hours that they'll forget. They'll forget their problems. They'll forget. So it was a kind of escapism that was again intended that Lucas decided to embrace. I don't know for what reason. I don't know what led him down that path. But he very directly says it's about escapism. He doesn't use the word escapism, but he says it's the idea is to create this world that's so alluring and so fantastic that for a couple hours people will forget. And it's not like everything. It's not like the world that he creates is everything all is well in that world, right? Because there's really bad guys in the world of Star Wars. But it's the war of good and evil, and it's the adventure, and it's the the laser fights and the Death Star attack and the lightsaber fight and all these kinds of things that blew people away, that blew people's socks off. Blew people's socks off. See, and so there's a part of escapism that is about disassociation. You willfully disassociate. And I think you willfully disassociate. You don't have to escape into a whole other world necessarily, but you stop. It's a way of escaping the knocks that life is throwing at you. You escape into a place that just takes you away. I think I've needed escape my whole life. I've needed the seduction of escape. I've needed to be shown things that take me out of myself. And yes, there is a certain I started off by talking about MK Ultra. There is a certain hypnotic resonance to mediums especially like cinema. But I think books can have that effect as well. It takes a little bit more effort to read. But once you become a reader and you're really hooked on a story, then it can be a very absorbing thing as well. So what am I saying through all of this? I'm saying we all need to find ways to disassociate, not to be irresponsible, not to just forget about the world and the problems of the world, and not in a bread and circuses kind of way. See, that's what I think a lot of critics, of culture who are on the money in everything they say. That's where I think, when they denigrate things like sports, or when they say, oh well, the populace they just want to watch their football games or their baseball games or their soccer games. and they don't want to think about, how their people are being displaced and blah blah blah. Well, I mean, people need that stuff. It's not an either or. And look, if you don't like sports, that's fine, but you need something. Everybody needs something. Sports are a form of, spectator sports or participatory sports, whichever. They are a form of um, escapism. And, we need that. We need it, and it's not an either or. I guess that's where I'll land with this rambly video. It's not an either or. You can enjoy your quote unquote bread and circuses, and still, and you can come back refreshed from whatever it is that absorbs you, that takes you away, that takes you out of yourself, takes you out of the world. You can come back refreshed and not feel so overwhelmed, and not feel so demoralized, and not feel so traumatized. I guess that's where my ultimate point is here. You can have it both ways. There needs to be a balance, of course. You don't want to just totally forget about the world that you live in and your responsibilities towards it. But you need your form of escape. So find it, and don't be ashamed of it.